Welcome back to Fit for Halter. In this episode, you get to meet Kathy Pettit, who's a true icon in the halter horse industry. She's someone who's dedicated decades to this sport, working alongside some of the most renowned trainers, building a breeding program rooted in excellence, and showing horses that have left a lasting remark in the arena. Her journey was forever changed by one special horse, a catalyst that not only shaped her vision, but also launched a program that had produced world-class champions. Over the years, she's earned numerous world titles, seen her horses succeed under other exhibitors, and become a respected voice in the industry. And right now, she's gearing up for one of the biggest weeks of the year, heading to the World Show with one of the best horses she's ever raised. I can't wait for you to hear her stories, her insight, and the heart behind the program that she's built. Thank you, Kathy, for being here. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's just get started. You've been in the industry for decades. So how did your journey in the horse world begin?
Well, if you ask my mother, she said I came out saying the word horse, which did not make either of my parents very happy. My mom was a real estate broker and an antique dealer, and my dad was an architect, and there were no horses in their life at that point. And so they dealt with it the best way they could. So every Christmas I got Breyer horses. So I think they thought that was going to be adequate. And pretty soon it showed that it wasn't going to be adequate. So that's, I just was an obstinate kid that just kept after it and after it and after it. So I distinctly remember one night around the dining room table when, families used to do that. My dad was having a vigorous conversation with my older brother about some sports equipment he needed, and my father was not real happy about whatever it was going to cost. And I just piped up and said, "I want a horse." To which my father turned and looked at me and said, "Get a job, buy it yourself." And my mother burst into tears because she knew that was a challenge. And it took me probably about a year to save enough money to buy my first horse. Years before that, typical girl. I cleaned stalls for the opportunity to ride someone else's horse. I hung out at the local barns. I earned babysitting money to go ride at a hack stable and worked my way up to Wrangler. And, if you love them that much, you find a way.
Absolutely. I agree. So who were some of the most influential people or mentors that you worked with early on, and what were some of your takeaways?
Well, I'd have to say that probably the first person was my 4-H leader. Her name was Sue Friday, and she raised Morgan horses. But she was a matter of fact, no nonsense kind of gal, and I learned a lot from her. Then it was the guy that I bought my first horse from. So I didn't start out in quarter horses. I started out in Appaloosas. And I had gone around looking at horses for sale. I had seen this horse at his ranch. And when I went back to buy him, he was loaded in the slaughter truck to leave to go to the kill pen. And I, as an obstinate 17-year-old, said, "Get my horse off that truck," and paid him the money for the horse. And he was an influence in kind of a strange way. He joked with everybody that he just met the biggest sucker he'd ever met in his entire life, and they thought it was something to laugh at. Years later, about, I'd say, bought the horse. I was a junior in high school. So about the time I was graduating from high school, that horse had won 8 state champions. I rode him saddle seat, and he was a natural at it. And with the help of my 4-H leader, I whooped some butt with him. And that man was a motivator. So sometimes motivation isn't positive, it's negative. And I wanted to prove him wrong. And at the TriStar New Jersey Appaloosa Club banquet, he got up on the mic and apologized to me and told me how proud he was of me and what I'd done with that horse. And that was just food for me to try harder. His only regret before he passed away is he didn't get to come out here and see me at the ranch. And it would have been wonderful for him to see what he started. From there,
Mhm.
there was a period where I didn't have horses, so I didn't really have anybody that played any role. But the next person who had a big impact on me was good old George Minnick. George was kind of a gruff kind of a guy. And at that time, I first met George by showing to him. And he didn't care where the horse came from. The horse was the best horse in the pen, you won. But he was not warm and snuggly. He was very gruff. And then he actually hired me, didn't know it was me that he was hiring to come out here to Fresno, California to work for him. And I reminded him after he had already agreed to hire me that, I'm that gal that rides the crazy black and white Appaloosa gelding saddle seat that you really like. I will not say what he said over the phone to me, but he didn't have any regrets for me going to work for him. But when I went to work for him, he had an 11 stall barn, and 10 of the horses in the barn were either world or national champions. And that was probably my actual first taste of what good halter horses are. He had, the one a lot of people talk about was a Palomino Appaloosa horse named My Daddy's Tough. Oh my God, when he came in the barn, I knew there was a level above the level that I thought I had attained, that there were, I tell people, if you stand on the observation deck of the Empire State Building and think you've got there, you're at the top, look up. There's another whole Empire State Building on top of your shoulders. You just haven't been exposed to it. You don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things in our industry that makes it hard, is that people don't know what they don't know. And you have to go to the big shows to get yourself educated. It's an expensive sport, whether it's time, effort, or money. It can be a combination. It can be really expensive, but not take much time. But it also can take an incredible amount of effort and time and not that much money. You choose. So it was a goal at that point for me, like, wow, there is something else out there. He had one particular horse. I'll never forget the horse. His name was Prince McDonald. And he woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning for me to come out to see the horse, because you'll like this horse. So we uncovered him with his, 3 hoods and his 3 blankets, and I was speechless. He was a leopard. In my lifetime, I've not been a big fan of leopards, but he was a leopard horse that had like thumbprint size spots on him. He was the most magnificent horse I'd ever seen in my entire life. And I thought, someday I'm going to have me something like this. And I was very fortunate, because of my experience and knowledge and a whole lot of luck. I got one like that, only he was a quarter horse.
Yeah.
So, I had my stud horse shown for a while with Bob Kale. Bob had impressed me a lot, just really class act. And when I hired him to shank my horse on the weekends, he gave me credit for being the one who fit the horses. But he would make suggestions to me, and it wasn't like, you're doing it wrong. It was like, you might want to try this. And that always works better than someone whacking you over the head with a 2x4.
Yeah.
Same thing with Luke Castle. He's ultimately the one who showed my stud horse that really put me on the map. And he was the only one, when I brought him to the show as a yearling, everyone else was just, price him, price him, price him. And I wouldn't. And Luke was participating in the intercollegiate horse judging competition. He looked up and he saw me on the balcony, and he just said to me, he says, "That's a really nice colt." That's all he said. I was so impressed that he wasn't trying to badge me either to price him, sell him, or how he could do me a better job or whatever. But a lot of what I have learned is because I'm somebody and my friends don't laugh, I can keep quiet and just listen. And as a kid, I didn't have a lot of money for lessons. So a lot of times I was a rail bird. I just sat on the rail and watched and observed. And then I might ask somebody some questions. But most of my learning's been from watching other people watch what they do right and watch what they do wrong.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So in light of that, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced, and how have you handled them?
I think I have a pretty good attitude overall. And when I decided to get back into the horses after an 8-year hiatus,
Mm-hmm.
I went to horse shows. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to see what was the industry doing, because 8 years is almost a lifetime in our industry.
Sure.
And so I went to a show that offered classes for Appaloosas, paints, and quarters. There were 2 whole Appaloosas, maybe half a dozen paints. It wasn't a big show. It's a show that ultimately ended up folding because it wasn't very popular. But I thought to myself, okay, if I get me a quarter horse, then if I want Appaloosas or paints, I can
Mm-hmm.
breed her that way. But if I
Mm-hmm.
start with an Appaloosa or a paint, you can't go back the other way. So that
Mm-hmm.
made the decision for me that I was going to buy a quarter horse. And then
Mm-hmm.
I started looking, and things had changed so much in the time that I'd been away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I could tell this story, or you can edit it out. So I went to a show in Galt, California, which
Uh-huh.
is approximately 2.5 hours north of here. And Jack Brizendine was showing this gorgeous gray mare. She went grand champion, and her name was Dolly House. And I went up to him and I said, "You probably don't remember me, but I'm gonna get back and get a horse, and I want a halter horse. And, could you just give me a little guidance? How much would a horse like this cost?" Jack, only like Jack could do. He looked me up and he looked me down and he looked me square in the eye. He said, "More than you can afford." I was like appalled, but that was Jack. And on the way home, I'm looking at a map because I knew Greg Whalen's place was somewhere near that. And I thought, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to go to Greg Whalen's place. So I pulled in, and they were away at a show in Albany, Oregon. And the
Mm-hmm.
ranch manager that time, her name was Nancy, she took me around and showed me horses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never seen Paige. He kind of came into being and had his career during a time that I wasn't showing.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
knew then why he was so popular. I mean, he was phenomenal. Then she took out a mare. I wasn't that impressed. I just like, okay, what's this one cost? And she said 35,000. I thought I was gonna faint. I'm like, oh my God, what has happened to the horse industry?
Right. Right.
She says, well, what do you got to spend? And I said, maybe 10% of that. She goes, oh, we have to go look at the weanlings and yearlings. I'm like, no, I want to ride. So we're walking down the barn and she says, wait a minute. uh, There's this horse over here. It's Mary's pet. I don't know if she'd sell her or not, but let's look at her. She
Mm-hmm.
threw open that door and I was in trouble. I was like, oh
Mm.
my God, I have to have that mare. She said, I don't know if they'd sell her. I don't know what price it would be. I'll talk to
Mm-hmm.
Greg and Mary when they get back from Oregon and we'll give you a call.
Yeah.
They called the morning of Father's Day. And I couldn't get to the phone fast enough. And she says, well, Greg and Mary say they remember who you are and it would be a good fit. And if you come up today, they'll sell her to you for $5,000.
Mm. That's amazing.
I, I just looked at my husband and he said, okay, I guess I'm spending Father's Day in the car. But Greg and Mary were pretty sharp. They didn't hardly pay attention to me because they knew I was already sold. They were doing the sales job on my husband. It was pretty funny. And the mayor was doing the sales job. She snuggled up
Mm.
next to him, made a big deal about it. And I said, oh, good horse. So we ended up writing the check that day. And that started my quarter horse journey. She was only
Wow.
2 at that point, which
Okay.
meant she wasn't broke to ride. I had to have her broke to ride. I didn't have a truck. I didn't have a trailer. My husband used to joke with people, my wife's the only person you know who bought a horse before she even had the trailer.
Yep.
So
Priorities.
she,
You wanted to make sure
and
that horse was yours.
well, and he didn't understand. He said, she's little. I thought you wanted a black horse. I said, I did, but here's the selling point. So I like to study pedigrees. And what I don't think Mary and Greg knew, she was out of a mare named Sonny's Honey Girl. And I remember when Nancy told me that, I kind of perked up and I said, any relation to Sonny's Money Girl? And she said, yeah, daughter. I said, oh. I didn't say anything after that. So my husband asked me, he said, why was that important? I said, that mare was an incredible halter mare. And on this mare that we just bought, on her pedigree, Sonny's Money Girl was the distaff's dam. In
Mm,
other words, on the bottom side of the
mhm,
pedigree, that's who she
mhm,
was. I said
mhm,
she didn't produce a lot of good quarter horse babies. She was bred to impressive, I believe, 5 times, and only had one that earned a superior, but no national awards.
mhm.
But they sold her to a place called Crown Center Farms, who stud an Appaloosa son of impressive.
Mhm.
And they crossed her 5 times and she produced 5 world and national champions.
Wow.
Producers produce producers. And
Mm,
so I already knew it was in there that she was going to be a producer.
mhm,
The lessons I learned along the way is you can get in the way of a good producer being a
mm,
producer. You can pick the wrong stallions for the wrong reasons. You just have to know what you're after.
mhm,
And we didn't hit it out of the park for the first 4 years, but we sure as heck did in the 5th year. And that resulting foal is who introduced me to the quarter horse industry. I
mm,
was innocuous at that point. No one knew who I was. So I could sit in the crowd and listen to stories and conversations, and they didn't know who I
mhm.
was until I got that horse. And then
Yeah.
everybody knew who I was. So she continued by having I sold Dan Fox his first halter horse. Intersection came from my
Uh-huh.
program. He
Uh-huh.
was a half brother to my good stud, the package,
Mhm.
and Dan bought him from me. So in many of my conversations with Dan, he'll say, thank you for selling me that horse.
Mm.
He's gone way beyond what I have gone, but I like to remind him that I'm the one who got him started in halter horses. And
They
luckily
all
did.
start somewhere,
And
right?
he's got a great sense of humor. So
Yeah.
he always thinks it's funny when he talks to me. So, anyways, yeah, she produced. Funny thing, you don't really know this until you've had a few.
Mhm.
She was a boy mom, not a
Okay.
girl mom. She only had one girl that really did anything. But she had 3, 4 colts that all of them did something. If you look at
Wow.
her produce record, you can see the girls have some performance points, but the boys, they made their mark on the industry, whether it was in the
And
show pen or in the breeding barn, one or
yeah,
the other. So,
who were some of those boys?
well, her first boy, she okay, again, blasphemous. She had 4 fillies in a row. And I said to
Okay.
my husband, I said, could she just have us one colt? Just one good one. Wayne was not a horse person, so he just used to listen to me rant. It was pretty funny. He goes, I thought everybody wants fillies. Yeah, but I want a colt. I went to college, studied equine reproductive physiology. I have a degree
Mhm.
from Cornell University and Fresno State University. I wanted a colt. And so I said, and we can't spend $1,000. We have to spend some money. We
Mhm.
have to breed to one of the big boys because that's the only way we're going to get what we want.
Mhm.
I took a trip to the world, and a friend that I was with was busy, and I said, well, I'm just going to drive me down to that Aubrey Pilot Point area, and I'm going to go look at some
Mhm.
horses. And I went to
Mhm.
Doug Talon's place. He had just moved into a new place. He took out Obvious Conclusion, he was older, he was mid-20s. And I said, nope, that won't work on her. He took out another stud. I went, nope, that one should be a gelding. He took out a horse named Coolest, who I really
Mhm.
liked. He said, I got one more. And he pulled out my stallion's daddy, who was at long last. And I knew,
Mhm.
I knew he was the one. I knew he was the
Mhm.
perfect cross. We had talked about breeding her to Mr. Conclusion, but at
Mhm.
the $10,000 stud fee, that was not really plausible for someone like Wayne and me. But
Mhm.
at long last, had the same bloodlines. And Doug took him out. It was pretty funny. That horse kept watching me. If I walked around
Mm.
behind, he kind of turned around and Doug said, he's watching you. I said, he is because he knows. He said, what do you
Mm.
mean? I said, he's the one. He
Mm.
said, well, how do you know that? I said, they crossed Mr. Conclusion on a really good Page Impressive mare, and they got Mr. GQ.
Mhm.
I think crossing a son of Mr. Conclusion on
Mhm.
another daughter of Page Impressive with a pretty impressive record on her bottom side, she's going to make me something pretty fantastic.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'll never forget that morning ever in my entire life.
Yeah.
The mayor was kind of waiting for me to come down to the barn. It was broad daylight, and we had a training stable at that time, and the gal had probably 30 students there. And I went down and went, oh, well, I guess we're going to have the baby with all these people watching. And she laid down, and out those white legs came, and I went, okay, it's going to have
Mm.
chrome. And then the head came out, and I said to Wayne, I said, God damn it, it's another filly. He said, how do you know that? I said, look at the head. He said, I think you have to wait for the plumbing.
Mhm.
Sure enough, she spit that colt out, and I looked, and I fell in the straw and just started sobbing, just
Mm.
absolutely sobbing. And he said, what's the matter? I said, it's a colt. He said, well, see, colts are generally not as ambitious about getting up and
Mhm.
nursing.
Mhm.
They can take hours. Fillies are up in 30 minutes. They're nursing 15 minutes later. Not him. He was up in 10 minutes. He nursed, and then he stood there and looked at me and then started walking towards me. And then I really
Mhm.
started crying. And now Wayne was afraid I
Yeah.
was going to like kill myself. And he said, now what? I said, we just raised our first world champion. He
Mm.
said, how do you know that? I said, 40 years of experience. He's got the it thing.
Mhm.
He's like, what does
Mhm.
that mean? I said, It's hard to describe if you're not a horse person.
Yeah.
It's also hard to describe if you're not a halter person. I said, he's commanding the room. He's
Mhm.
saying, look at me. You're
Mhm.
born with it. You can't make it. You
Yeah.
can't make them do that. And he did not disappoint me. And then we had a tragedy right after that. I had a mare that I had chased National Honor Roll points with, and her name was Akusa Matata Miss. And she was
Mhm.
well known out here in California.
Mhm.
Um, and she had foundered. She had an allergic reaction to a vitamin shot that we gave her for all things and foundered.
Mhm.
And we had
Mm.
worked really hard to save her. And it had been a year. She was making really good progress. And I was inconsolable. I had to get out of the stall. I was crying so hard. And Wayne said to me, he said, why are you crying so hard? You got your colt. I said, God's going to take Maddie.
Mm.
She died 11 days later.
Mm.
That's the hard part about the business. Sometimes you have to make a sacrifice
Sure.
to make progress. And I have seen it over and over and over again. So I know it's a thing. Some of your
Mhm.
listeners may think I'm crazy, but it did happen. I didn't let
Yeah.
anybody see him. I knew what he was. He was so big. He was born like the 11th of February. And by the time he was 6 weeks old, he was like the size of a December weanling.
Mm.
And I went to a show thinking I was ready to be among people, which I wasn't. The loss of that mare was really, really hard on me. And they were all talking about some fantastic mare, had this great baby, and Greg was going to win all the fraternities. And, they just kind of went on and on. And
Mhm.
I just stood there, and a friend of mine, he said, "You're awfully quiet." He said, "I'm just listening." He said, "What did Honey have? A cold?" He said, "I'm following you home." And he did. And when he got to the ranch, the colt was laying down. And I went in the pasture to make him get up. And when he stood up, Scott fell down. He says, "Oh, Greg's going to be mad. Greg's going to be really mad." That colt, as a weanling, won all 4 amateur fraternities, was first in 2 of the open fraternities, and second in 2 where it was pretty obvious that there was some gamesmanship, let's put it that way.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's when I made friends with Danny Summerer.
Mhm.
He so I gave the colt was so big, we had him on Copperquine, and it really
Mhm.
helped him because he was so
Mhm.
big.
Mhm.
And Danny actually called me and said, "Do you work for that company?" I said, "No." He said, "Your letter's in the Quarter Horse Journal." I said, "What letter?" He said, "The letter that you sent that company about what your colt did." I'm like, oh my God. She put the entire letter, didn't change the font, didn't rewrite the letter. She put the
Wow.
whole letter with my address, my phone numbers, my emails, everything.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was an interesting experience. So, anyways, that's how I met Danny. And we've since had a lifelong friendship, um, primarily over the halter horses.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
he did not disappoint. I could do one of your podcasts twice over just telling you stories about that horse, the
Well,
things
we'll
that
have to try that.
happened. It
Yeah.
it was quite a journey, quite a
Yeah.
journey. And he's the one that people know who I am because of him.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Honey started it,
Yeah.
but he
That's
put
awesome.
he put an underline underneath it, put it in bold
Yeah.
print and an exclamation point afterwards.
Tell us
So
what's her registered name again?
that mare, her registered name was A Honey of a Page.
Okay.
And
Okay.
the
For
first
our
colt was the
Yeah.
package.
Okay. For our folks who would love to study the bloodlines, I'm sure they'll be looking her up after
Yeah.
this episode. So, you've talked a little bit about the look, the presence that he had. Tell us some other attributes you would say make a halter horse a great halter horse or a world champion. Just what is it that you see?
Well, I I host an FFA horse judging competition here every year.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these kids know me because I am very much pro support the kids. I don't care if
Mm-hmm.
they're 5-year-old kids or they're
Mm-hmm.
20-year-old kids in college. Support the
Mm-hmm.
kids, because we don't support the kids, we're not going to have an industry. So
Mm-hmm.
I host it here at no charge. I line up the horses, and every year I tell them, when we go over the classes and the placings, I tell them, you need to take notes. If you really want to do this, maybe some of you are going to be future judges. You
Mm-hmm.
need to learn this because they pretty much judge performance horses for their confirmation. There are very few
Mm-hmm.
halter places out here. I'm one of the few places. We bring the same 4 mares out every year and they still can't get it right. And so I invite them to come back so I can show them individually what to look for. A lot of these
Mm-hmm.
kids think it's simply muscle. It's all about the
Mm,
muscle. I said, it's not all about the
right.
muscle. I said, here's the hardest thing to get. And I learned this from George Minnick. Balance, balance, balance. A horse is divided into 3 sections. First
Mm-hmm.
section is in front of the girth. The second section is in the middle to the flank, and then from the
Mm-hmm.
flank backwards. Those
Mm-hmm.
3 sections should be
Mm-hmm.
equal to your eye. One
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be bigger. They should all be proportionate. We've seen horses where they're big old massive front ends and their rear ends don't match, or the one we see, and once you get in your program, it's hard to get it out, is those long
Mm-hmm.
backs where the middle's too
Mm-hmm.
long.
Mm-hmm.
They have to balance.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get balanced, now you can start looking for correctness.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of the things that really excites me about this filly I'm taking back to the Halter Million is that her neck comes out of the top of her shoulder, and it's long. It's a longer than what we used to breed for neck, but coming out of the top of the chest is
Mm-hmm.
hard to get, because most of them,
Mm-hmm.
it comes out from like the middle of the chest, and
Mm-hmm.
you can work them and sweat them. You can have them hold their head a certain way to make it look like it comes out of the top of the shoulder. But trust me, when you see one where it naturally comes out of the top of the shoulder, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God. Um, Top line. And you have to explain to these kids what top line is, because the coaches
Mm-hmm.
aren't teaching them what top line is. They think it's just a portion of what the true top line is. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have to tell them that it encompasses from the withers back, across the loin, down the croup. That has to be like butter. It needs to be smooth. It needs to flow. It can't have stops. It can't have bulges. It can't have this. It just has to flow.
Mm-hmm.
When you have all three of those, I'm getting chills just talking about my own horse.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is nothing you did. It isn't the
Mm.
fitting that you did. It isn't the clipping that you did. It isn't the food that you fed him. It's none of those things. It came out that way because of good
Mm-hmm.
genetics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it makes you look like you're an expert when you have one like that,
Mm-hmm.
because they've done it all for you.
Mm-hmm.
You can get in the way by pushing them too hard or doing the wrong things,
Mm-hmm.
but um the great ones come out great. And you,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, you talk to any top halter trainer, top halter exhibitor, they'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
they come out that way.
Mm.
You can help some of them when
Sure.
they're not so good here or there, but the great ones came out that way, and just don't screw it up,
Mm.
is basically what I would tell people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been, I always had an eye. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
always know how to get what I had in my mind's eye is what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw, this is kind of a roundabout, I have a
Mm-hmm.
buckskin mare by A Pirate's Life for Me.
Mm-hmm.
And she's both a world champion and reserve world champion at ABRA.
Mm-hmm.
And she has that kids classic style look, a little too long in the middle. And I needed to find a stud horse that I thought could shorten that up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I picked Speechless for her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we tried and we tried. She gets pregnant, she doesn't keep it. We've tried, I have an education in that area. I think I know what to try next, but she's not
Mm-hmm.
holding on to them. So we
Mm-hmm.
had to switch breedings.
Okay.
So the way I got that all accomplished is I talked to um, Bradshaw's people and said,
Mm-hmm.
look, this is a world champion producing mare. I need to switch that breeding to her, because the
Mm-hmm.
other mare I have has an H, and I can't breed
Mm-hmm.
Speechless to her. And they
Mm-hmm.
said, fine. So we
Mm-hmm.
bred her. I thought it would work. If it was going to work for the buckskin mare, it was probably extra super going to work for this mare. That
Mm-hmm.
baby came out, and I just it just lost my cookies. I was like, oh my God, she is like perfect. She's perfect.
Oh.
And so the thing people have to remember is, you will know when you see a great one. You can
Mm.
talk yourself into one being great, but when you see one, you
Mm.
know it. You just
Yeah.
know it. And you can't get in the way. And that's what most
Mm-hmm.
humans do, is we get in the way.
Mm.
So I try to teach those kids that come out here, whether it's FFA.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, my big open show here at the ranch
Mm-hmm.
is the first 2 weekends of October. And I have decided, and I've put this out through different connections, that we're going to have a horse judging competition at the horse show. And at first, everybody's like, well, how are you going to do that? I said, have you
Uh-huh.
ever known me not to already figure out how we're going to do it? I think we need to encourage people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean anybody, whether it's 4-H, FFA, intercollegiate, amateurs, trainers, just people who come to spectate. Give them
Right.
something to do, to see, give them awards. I already have awards already lined up for it. So we're gonna hold the classes within the classes. So the judge won't know which one of the horses are for the horse judging competition, but the people participating will.
Mm-hmm.
We won't be able to do the performance classes, but because
Sure.
it'll be a little too confusing for that. But for the halter classes, we're gonna run a typical intercollegiate FFA or 4-H horse judging competition and let the public participate.
Mm-hmm.
I love Oprah Winfrey used to say that make your mess your messages. And Robin Roberts says it. And I believe that the way to get the next generation engaged is to engage them.
Mm-hmm.
People come to support their family. They bring little
Mm-hmm.
boys. I love it. They're out back. I got to worry about them throwing manure at each other in the manure pile. But give them something they can do so that
Mm-hmm.
they're engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Like now it's interesting. Now I can win something.
Mm-hmm.
And then people get more interested in whatever it is you're doing. I
Yeah.
have a gal here who gives riding lessons and trail rides to beginners. And we always take them around the ranch to show them the halter horses. I told her, I said, that's the toll. You're paying the toll. I want these people to see pretty horses. I want to tell them my story. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
we catch one. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
the typical hack horse that's giving little kids rides is not the same as, Miss Penelope in the barn weighs 1,900 pounds.
Mm,
Uh, I always love their faces when we pull her out.
yeah.
Yeah, I know that that's what did it for me. Somebody along the
Yeah.
line took a horse out and I went, oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I want to do that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what the
That's
hope is
fantastic.
anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit about how you approach within your breeding program, not only that world champion look that you're looking for, the baby that comes out and that but also longevity in the industry, whether it's halter or transitioning to some other job within the horse world, soundness, good mind, like all of that. How are you also incorporating those attributes into your babies when you're thinking about your breeding program?
Well, we don't push early. I let them be babies. We
Mm-hmm.
do lead them.
Mm-hmm.
We start them with butt ropes really early. We lead them
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, but I don't go pushing them. I wean a
Mm-hmm.
little. I don't, I guess a lot of people follow Farmer's Almanac. I don't.
Uh-huh.
I just know when it's time. We do the easy
Mm-hmm.
way to wean. We don't rip them off the mares and separate them by a zillion miles. We
Mm-hmm.
put the babies, usually two, in a pen together and the moms on either side. There's a
Mm-hmm.
4-rail fence where they can get through the fence and still nurse.
Mm.
It cuts their consumption of milk in half. So then
Mm-hmm.
you don't also have to worry about mastitis in the mares.
Mm-hmm.
From there, we move the mares across the way in the barn so the babies can still see their moms, but they can't nurse anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually they'll let you know when it's time to put the mares out in the pasture. My place isn't that big. They can still hear them or see them. We
Mm-hmm.
let them, I have a barn we call the breeding barn. It's got a 13-foot clearance. It has 20 by 24 pens in it. We keep them out there for a while. I don't want them in a stall until I really have to start fitting on them. I want them to
Mm-hmm.
just be babies. And
Mm-hmm.
so this group got in the barn a little later than I normally like to do. I had
Mm-hmm.
major reconstruction surgery done on one of my feet, and I
Mm.
was sequestered to the house for 5 weeks. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't go outside. And then
Mm-hmm.
getting around after that was extremely difficult. So they went in the barn 60 days before this show coming up. And we just try a little bit of everything every day. We
Yeah.
don't work them every day. We don't groom them every day. We introduce them slowly to stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We were laughing. The filly, I said, you watch, this one's going to take to everything like it's no big deal. So I took the vacuum and turned it on outside her stall and just left it on and thought,
Mm-hmm.
all right, let's see. Took the vacuum in. She
Mm-hmm.
said, oh, I like that. Okay. Yes, noisy. I don't care. Like, oh, it makes your job so much easier.
Right? Yeah, that's fantastic.
We just try. I don't work them really hard. Babies never
Mhm,
get more than 10 minutes. I
mhm,
don't have a track, so we use the round pen. We
mhm,
use it every other day so they don't get
mhm,
overworked. We
mhm,
make sure that they're fed adequately. I asked for some help this year. I've fought epiphysitis, which is technically physitis. I've fought that on almost every baby.
mhm,
And so I had had an older horse with Dan Mannion, and I just called
mhm,
Dan. I said, Dan, what are you doing to prevent, deal with
mhm, mhm.
physitis? And he says, oh, here, this food, sends me a picture of it. He says, I'll warn you, it looks like dog food. He
Yep,
was
I know
right.
what you're talking about.
It did look like dog food. I'm like, are
It
they gonna
does.
eat that? I have a Sail on Sailor colt
Mhm,
who still has problems.
mhm,
But if you string test him, he's gonna be over uh 17 hands.
mm.
I just backed right off of him.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
harder to do when you're a small farm like I am. I try not to raise more than 2 or 3 babies a year.
Mhm,
Um, we just stopped. I didn't enter him in anything. I just stopped because he can't lock in. First thing in the morning
mm,
he can, but if he moves around as tall as he's gonna be, it's not worth it. And that's what you
mhm,
have to learn. It's the hardest lesson to learn. Leave some of them at home. Not all of
mhm.
them are going to be weanling fertility babies.
Yeah.
And so we started focusing on the filly, and she just, I mean, I still to this day, I open that stall door and I just want to grab my chest. I mean, she's my kind of halter horse.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So hopefully I'm not wrong. We'll see.
In just a matter
Um,
of days,
yeah,
we'll
I've
find
been
out.
watching the results from uh Breeders' Halter Fraternity,
Mhm.
and I think she's gonna do just fine.
That's fantastic. I
Yeah,
can't wait to watch.
yeah.
Can't wait. So
So
yeah, go ahead.
it is. So for some of you viewers who are,
Mhm.
gone down the road, done it, been there,
Mhm.
whatever. Um, my husband passed away in '09.
Mhm.
This will be the first time that I have
Mm.
traveled halfway across the country by myself with a horse since he passed away 16 years ago. So it's a
Wow.
little nerve wracking. And
Sure.
I'm the first one to admit it. Um, I did it all the years that we showed the package. We did it a few times when we showed some other stock that I had,
Mhm.
but yeah, this will be an adventure. So we're looking forward to it, mostly
Yeah.
because I so miss my friends.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
you make friends all over the country
Mhm.
and then you don't get to
Mhm.
see them. And Facebook's okay, but it's not the
Sure.
same thing as sitting down with
You're
your
right.
friends and trading stories and um, yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that as much as showing the world my filly.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a close-knit community.
It
Even
is.
though we're spread out, we talked about that, my husband and I, just this weekend about we pick up right where we left off.
Yep.
There's an in season or on season, and then an off season. And distinctly, when it's off season, we don't connect with hardly anybody. But as soon as
Yeah.
we pick up in the spring and we're at our first show, it's like rekindling the relationships. They just
Yeah.
pick right up.
Well, and
Yeah.
I've done that. So in let's see, the filly's 6. So in 2019, I took a filly to the last Best of the West fraternity.
Mhm.
And Monty and Anna Horn were there. They were stabled right
Mm.
down from me.
Yeah.
And Anna came over and made such a big deal about so happy to see you. How are you doing? It made me cry.
Yeah.
Like people remember you, people miss you, people talk about you. You don't just disappear off the planet just because you
Yep.
stop showing.
Mhm.
And Monty called me about 2 weeks after that and wanted to know the Philly story. And I told it to him. And he said, well, do you think this or think that? I said, no, Monty, I think it is what it is. I think I have a very expensive broodmare. I can't fix what happened to her. And
Mm,
they beat her up pretty bad at the fraternity.
mm,
And so I have a pretty expensive broodmare. He wanted to buy her from me pretty bad. And that was a hell of a compliment that he did
yeah.
want to buy her.
Yeah.
And then Don Falcon called me right after the fraternity. He says, nobody was talking about the babies that won or took second or third. He says, they were all talking about your filly. I said,
Mm,
yeah, she's pretty special. He said, I'm sorry about, it's another long story, but she had some leg issues. And
mm,
he said that Philip Wilkerson said he wasn't talking, and Don said, they all turned to him and said, well, what do you think? He said, you put a good set of front wheels on that filly. She's the world champion. First time, every time. And that's all he
mm,
said. And what made that a big deal for me is that Don took the time to call me and tell me that.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was pretty special.
Yeah.
So
It's
the
pretty
sail on
special.
sailor colt that
Hmm.
I'm gonna hold off on is out of her.
Hmm. Okay.
And he's he's not all there yet because he's so dang tall.
Hmm.
He won't get any body till he's, I don't know, late yearling, early 2-year-old. I know Carrie didn't show Sailor until he was 2, so I'm looking at probably the same thing, but we'll see in
Hmm.
his yearling year. I'm willing to wait on him. He's a pretty nice colt. And he'll be
Yeah.
memorable because he's got a birthmark that covers half of his chest, half of his neck, all of his left shoulder, down around his girth and his forearm. And it's not
Wow.
offensive. I thought it would be at first. I was like, what the hell is this?
Hmm.
But it's not offensive. Okay, this is weird. So Sail on Sailor was Palomino, the mare's Sorrel.
Hmm.
I joked one time, I posted online, I said, my mom is Sorrel and my dad is Palomino. I couldn't decide which color I wanted to be, so I'd be both. So the lighter colored hair is Palomino.
Oh, wow.
So he has this huge Palomino patch on him that it's just weird, but it's
Yeah.
not offensive. It's not one of those
Yeah.
things you go, oh God, ugh. It's not. So all of that's gonna be really interesting to watch as he grows up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll
So
change and evolve too.
yeah. So AQHA had to put some interesting wording on his papers that, pretty much didn't say he had a white patch. I
Right.
had to prove that it didn't have pink skin under it.
Uh-huh.
But I was afraid because I'd never seen anything like that they were gonna have to send an inspector out. But I guess they've seen it before because they didn't, once I took a picture, we shaved part of it right on the edge
Hmm.
and took photographs. They didn't squawk at all. So I'm like, okay,
All right.
yeah.
So in talking about or thinking about your halter career and some of the highlights, what's maybe one of the wins that meant the most to you and why?
Oh, I think your viewers who know me know what the answer to this is. So in 2005,
Hmm.
the package won the amateur class. And the only regret I have about that, it was the year that they decided they weren't going to do the judge by judge placings because
Hmm.
it would have been pretty cool. He was first place under all 5 judges.
Mm.
But I took a lot of crap from people going on and on and on about how the only reason he won is because Rita Crenwell let go of her horse. That's not fair. The rules are the rules. It
Sure.
doesn't matter
Sure.
whether she let go, he broke loose. None of that matters. The fact that the horse was loose in the arena means you're disqualified. Well,
Hmm.
for 10 days, I had to listen to that BS.
Hmm.
And when we were getting ready for the open, I remember Luke saying, he says, now, Ted's going to be showing execute. We should be happy with it, whatever we get. And I looked at him and I said, it ain't over till the fat lady sings and I'm the fat lady. And I couldn't believe I said it to him. It was like, ooh, okay, that's when your inside voice, you let it outside. You
Right.
might
Right.
have thought better than to do that. So we sat up in the stands and Danny was across the aisle from me. And the first thing that happened is his horse was not paying attention to Luke. He was kind of taking his tongue and doing the, so I go
Hmm.
down the end of the Coliseum where he's standing. I yelled his name, and you can see him going, oh shit, where is she? She's in the building. Oh
Mm-hmm.
my God.
Uh-huh.
And so he did it one more time, and I said, "Baba." He stopped. Luke tried not to laugh. I could tell he was thinking, oh boy. And Trey Keys was down in the Coliseum showing a horse that he and his dad had. And his dad leans over and says, no coaching from the rail. We laughed so hard. It was hysterical. So I go back down to my seat and they start placing and they get to the top 10. And I said to Danny, well, he's top 10. Danny's like, are you nuts? So they keep going, they keep going, they keep going. They get to fifth place. And it's a horse that had been showing in California. And there's something about people from the same state having rivalries that aren't rivalries. Why can't we all be nice to each other? But they'd been less than nice to me. And I just looked over at Danny, and it's probably the only time I can ever remember being catty. And I said, oh, well, I guess he was supposed to be top 5. So then Execute is 4th. And I looked over and said, oh, I guess I was supposed to beat that horse anyways.
Wow.
Danny's laughing. He's got his video camera on me, not on the class, on me. And there were 3 horses left, Colt by Enlightened, my horse, and Rockster, who was a former world champion. And Danny's like, what's Rockster's number? What's Rockster's number? I said, I don't know. He said, well, look it up. So I'm looking up Rockster's number. They call the Enlightened bred horse for 3rd. So now it's just me and Rockster.
Mm-hmm.
I think Luke thought we were automatically going to be reserves. So he kind of stepped up away from the rail. And I said to Danny, I said, well, Rockster's number 799. And I hear, and reserve world champions number 799. Rock. I lost my you know what.
Wow.
I don't remember a word they said about my horse. All I remember is hearing 799 because it's the one time in the horse world at a horse show you do not want your number called.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Luke kind of backed my horse up a little bit. And Randy Jacobs took Rockster up for reserve world champion. And in the open, I don't know if people notice this. Most of the time, the announcer will ask the owner to acknowledge wherever they are in the Coliseum, and people kind of go, oh, not me. I stood up. I was doing jumping jacks and waving my hands.
Proud
the
mama.
guy says, well, there's a proud mother. It was pretty funny. It meant a lot because of the BS that happened between the amateur and the open. That open meant everything to me. Still
Absolutely.
does.
Yeah.
His webpage, before I left for that world show, had 3,600 hits, people looking. When he won the open, it went to 375,000 and crashed the website. Because
Wow.
they didn't know who I was. They didn't know who he was. Because I was pretty much limited there just in California. And the few times I ventured out of California, it wasn't like I brought him all the way back to the world. And no one really paid attention to him when he was a yearling, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, or even 4-year-old. But when he won it that year, they all wanted to know who he was.
Yeah.
So that win was a big deal. Really big deal. So I think even Luke was surprised. So that made it extra cool as well.
Yeah. So you're headed to the World Show. How do you maintain the right mindset going into that show with the size and the level of excitement that you're bringing? How do you help yourself stay balanced?
Well, so the ranch here, we board horses, we host horse shows. In the next 6 weeks, I will have gone to the Halter Million. Our Columbus Day Classic Open Horse Show is split English and Western. We do the English the first Sunday, Western the second. The weekend after that, I host a 3-day American Mule Horse Association approved mule show. The weekend after that, I host one of the largest horse rescues here in California for a fundraiser. The following weekend, we have the Fresno County 4-H Championships on a Saturday and my monthly November show on the Sunday. So by the time we're done with
Wow.
that horse show, I'm
Mhm.
gonna sequester myself at the house.
Sounds like a good plan.
When you're busy,
Hmm.
you don't have time to get in your own head about it.
That's a good point.
The
Yeah.
biggest thing confronting me right now, and I've been practicing. So one of the things we've learned, and I would tell all of your listeners, experienced or not, practice at home what you're going to do with the show. I don't care
Mm.
how big or how small that show is.
Hmm.
Practice at home. So we've gotten the filly in the trailer. The setup thing's been interesting. She's got a mind of her own, but she's built square, so getting
Hmm.
square, it's a process. She's getting
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
Um, but a lot of it has to be around me practicing. So I had to see, I know they have variance forms, but I'm determined not to use the variance form. So first I had to try on the boots to see if we could get my fixed foot into a
Hmm.
boot.
Hmm.
So that went okay. We've been practicing me walking and jogging to
Hmm.
present to the judges for soundness. That's been
Hmm.
going fine. We haven't done it with the boots yet, so we'll do it with the boots.
Hmm.
With horses, you have to, I had an incident one year where we hadn't practiced banding at home.
Mm.
Yeah, that didn't go so well. So she was fine with the banding. She wasn't so fine with us trying to fix it the next morning where she screwed it up.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
you got to practice that. I'm
Yeah.
lucky in that there are lessons going on here on a regular basis with the gal who gives lessons. So I'll
Hmm.
take her in the middle arena and that kind of chaos because they're all beginners. So it'll be
Hmm.
a little chaotic. That'll
Hmm.
help. I've
Hmm.
had her out and walked around the grounds while one of my regular monthly horse shows has been going on. So she's kind of used to that. So you have to practice at home what
Hmm.
you're going to do. And that gives you confidence
Yeah.
because if there is a problem, you have time enough to correct it, fix it,
Hmm.
uh, recalculate how to get around their particular yes, no, I won't, I will, whatever it is. And so when you go to the show, you've done your homework. The the winning is at home. It's not in the pen.
Mm.
The pen is the after effect of the effort that you put
Right.
into it.
Right. Yeah.
So I tell kids who try to school on their horses at the horse shows, practice is for
Yeah.
home. This
Right.
is you getting your grade for the practice
Hmm.
you've been doing or
Hmm.
not doing.
Right.
And I try to, because I host these shows, it's
Hmm.
a privilege to be able to try and influence them to see
Hmm.
farther than the dang screen on their phone. Like practice. Practice
Yeah.
means we've already practiced setting the filly up with silver halter on because it
Hmm.
fits different. My
Hmm.
jeans feel a whole lot different than when I used to wear pantyhose. Wear what you're going to wear.
Right.
Same
Yeah.
thing with them. They got to know
Yeah.
when that silver halter goes on, we're serious now.
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
just put it on for the first time there at the show, it feels different. So you got to
Hmm.
practice with the stuff you're going to use when you. So
Hmm.
we've put hoof black on her. We've clipped her. We've used the Bic razors on her. We've everything that we can think of. She has been sprayed with every kind of topical foo stuff you can think of. Just everything so that when we
Yeah.
get there, she doesn't. Yeah, the environment's going to be different,
Hmm.
but she'll go, oh yeah, I remember this.
Hmm.
So that's, to me, what you do at home makes a difference in your own confidence level.
Hmm.
And that translates to what your horse feels through the lead rope back to them. They feel your nerves.
Hmm.
So if you've practiced it, you're not as nervous. And so they're not
Yeah.
as nervous. So practice
Good
at home.
advice.
Practice, practice, practice.
Good advice. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, in addition to the practice, but if you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't listen to what other people have to say. Don't listen to
Mm.
their opinions about your vision.
Mm.
Trust yourself. So I have a rule now. having made this mistake numerous times.
Mm-hmm.
I don't breed to anything I haven't seen in person myself with my own two eyeballs.
Okay.
Everybody sees different. It is
Mm-hmm.
actually a physiological thing. You see different than I see.
Mm-hmm.
The arrogance of humans is that we think however we see it is exactly how everybody else should see it. And that's not true. The retinas in your eye see different.
Mm-hmm.
So a photograph, I don't think there's a lot of people who do photoshopping. I don't. There was a time where they did, but I don't think they do anymore. I think, but for your own mares, you need to go
Mm-hmm.
see, is that stallion what he is
Mm-hmm.
portrayed at in the photographs that are taken of him? Is that going to work on your mare?
Mm-hmm.
I've made some pretty huge mistakes by not doing that. Listening to somebody else tell me I should breed to this
Right.
horse, oh, I should breed this horse, and going ahead and do it because I admired them or their opinion, and then thought, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest things is that first of all, trust your gut, and number
Mm-hmm.
two, trust your eyeballs, not the camera's eyeballs, yours. And when I have done that, I have been right on. When I've listened to somebody else influence me,
Mm-hmm.
not so much.
Yeah. That's good. So when you look back at your career, not that it's finished, but looking back from this point backwards, what kind of legacy do you want to leave for the halter horse industry?
Even the smallest breeder
Mm-hmm.
can breed, fit, and show a world champion. I am a perfect example of that.
Mm.
Nobody knew who I was. Nobody. I mean, I can remember sitting in front of, I was sitting behind three very well-known wives of really big time halter people, and they were
Mm-hmm.
talking about me and my horse. I had a friend with me, she was having a fit. I mean, she was literally, they're talking about you. Like, I know. They just went on and on and on. And finally, I don't even remember what one of them said. And I leaned forward and I said, that's not true.
Mm.
I felt sorry. I did feel sorry. Woman kind of stopped and they all turned and looked at me. I said, oh, let me introduce myself. I'm Kathy Pettit. I bred, own, and showed the package.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know what I have. And some of that stuff you're saying is not true. So if
Mm.
you'd like me to maybe tell you what is the truth, I will do that.
Yeah.
And my friend was a little embarrassed. She goes, you are so New York sometimes, I can't stand you. I said, well, okay, well, sorry.
It is what it
Um,
is.
it is what
Yeah.
it is. And about 5 minutes later, they all got up and left. And she goes, oh my God, that was a moment. I said, they don't know who I am.
Uh-huh.
I said, until he wins, they won't know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
She said, you think they're going to let him win? I said, we'll see. In his 4-year-old year, we joke that that was his yellow year.
Okay.
So he was third in the nation amateur stallions, third in the nation junior stallions, third in the nation all stallions, third at the world in amateur, third at the world in open, third at the Congress amateur, third limited amateur, third open, and third limited open. And when he got the third in the amateur class at the world, I looked up at my friends up in the crowd and
Mm-hmm.
he's just shaking his head. I said, if they think I'm going to sell them this horse because they won't let him have a title,
Mm-hmm.
they haven't met me. And the next year
Mm.
he was world champion.
Yeah.
You just can't give up. You can't let the
Yeah.
naysayers tell you. You have to have your own goals. You have to have
Mm-hmm.
your own vision. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have to do what it takes to have what you want.
Yeah.
Here's what made it easy for me. At some point, and I think it was probably before '04. I think it's when the
Mm-hmm.
horse was a yearling. For some reason, I got this thought This is like the game of chess.
Mm.
Every piece has a different power structure,
Mm-hmm.
but any piece can take out the queen. You just have to think 5 moves ahead. And it's not personal. Chess pieces aren't personal. They make decisions based on what moves the other players can make. And if you follow that, it takes the thorns out of it. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think we get our feelings hurt.
Right.
The industry doesn't care whether you got your feelings hurt.
Mm-hmm.
There's a power structure. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. Not at all. I
Mm-hmm.
understand how life works.
Mm-hmm.
Once I accepted that and thought, what's the next best move for the stud horse? Not you,
Mm-hmm.
the stud horse.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next best move? And
Mm-hmm.
do that.
Mm-hmm.
We did that. And then it got us to another place. Okay, what's the next move? Every move I made, I thought out well in advance. I
Mm-hmm.
showed the colt as a weanling and kicked some major butt. He even at City of Industries was the big Southern California fraternities.
Mm-hmm.
And they were smart. They were one of the first people, at least out here, to hold the fraternity within the class. So you had to enter the class, which meant you had to follow all the AQHA rules. So one of my favorite judges was Ken Link, and he was one of the judges, and he was one of the judges the second day. And as we're leaving the class, so they're going to get all the stallions out, and then they're going to
Mm-hmm.
call in the fraternity winners. He says, I'd make it back to your stall as fast as I could. I said, why is that? He said, because I threw away the points. I said, what are you talking about? He says, oh, you'll see. He put, I think Jack had the age stallion. It was
Mm-hmm.
a full slate. It was the first time I ever seen a full slate of stallions. There were 2 weanlings, 2 yearlings, 2 2-year-olds, 2 3-year-olds, 2 aged for grand and reserve.
Mm-hmm.
He gave Jack the grand with the age horse, and he gave me reserve with a weanling, which is throwing away the points.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I couldn't
Wow.
make it back to my stall fast enough. But he won that. 4 judges across the board, he won it.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, okay, so we start in our yearling year.
Uh-huh.
And I took him to Silver Dollar Circuit. This is when it was at Horseman's Park. So South Point was just, not even a vision in anybody's mind yet.
Yeah.
And Daryl Cunningham came up to me and said, he's too thin. I said, what do you mean he's too thin? He says, too thin. He said, you need about 150 pounds on him. I said, oh, okay. He says, no. He said, Dorn Parkinson and I have been talking about your colt. He needs 150 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Don't bring him back out until he has 150 pounds. And he started to walk away. He said, oh, and by the way, find a man to show him. He's a yearling.
Mm-hmm.
I like fudgesicle. So I took him home and I started packing the weight on him.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a full circle moment. I had stopped by George's place to talk to him, visit
Mm-hmm.
with him, because he said I never came to visit anymore. So I went over to visit him. We were sitting on the tailgate of my truck, and he was petting a cat. He had a cat named Martin Luther. He's petting the cat, and I looked at him. I said, "Are you dying?" Why would you say that? I said, "Because you're petting a cat on my tailgate." Well, can I pat a cat? I said, "Not the George I know. He'd be at the end of your boot." Well,
Right.
sometimes you learn a few things. So he
Mm-hmm.
got talking about, I like to show one more good one. I'm like, uh, okay. And he says, I've shown a lot of good ones. Just one more time. I go
Mm-hmm.
home. I don't think anything of it. I tell my husband, he goes, oh my God, Kathy Pettit, did you not hear the man? Yeah. He said, he wants to show your colt. I said, he's a quarter horse. It doesn't matter. He was trying to tell you he wants to show the colt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So a couple days later, I called George and I said, you want to show the colt? Well, I'm not staying over. I mean, he just went, it was yes, but he had to get through his grumpiness to, let me know what a privilege it was for him to show my colt. So we get we get up at like 2 o'clock in the morning and drive down to Griffith Park. And I picked Griffith Park because one of the judges was Margot Ball, and the other
Mhm.
one was Bob Kale. And I love Bob,
Mhm.
and Bob was always fair. George never got a horse ready his entire life. He was standing there all dressed up, ready to go with his gloves on. And I'm just, oh my God, you're the same George you were 20 years ago. So he waits to the last second. Jack Brisendine's got a yearling already in the class. He thinks he's the only one. And here comes George in his orange shirt, because
Mm.
George was the original orange is my color guy.
Okay.
And he walks in that class. It totally knocked Brizendine off his game. He could not get that colt to stand up after that. He sets him up. He shows him. He wins the class. He gets reserve champion open stallion. I don't remember who got champion. And then I go down there. They do open first and then amateur. So I go back
Mhm.
into the amateur, and Bob walks around me and he leans over and he says, I see what you did there. Was so funny. It would just it was a moment. I had a filly out of the same mare by Kusa who had all kinds of leg problems, and I
Mhm.
I showed her as well, and I kind of buried her feet, and Bob walked around behind me and said, "Nice try." I mean, I have memories
Yeah.
like that go on forever. We
Yeah.
laughed about it because the mare was not much, but anyways, once I let George show the horse, then all of a sudden
Mhm.
I was okay. That was the right move to make. And
Okay.
then in his 2-year-old year, there was a bunch of stuff that happened. We got Luke to show him in the open.
Mhm.
Um, no, Luke wouldn't show him as a 2-year-old. Luke showed him as a 3-year-old because he had a conflict.
Mm. Mhm.
But after that class, I saw Bob. I said, Bob, you're going to be back at the stalls after a while? He said, sure. I said, can I come on by? He said, sure. So I went, talked to him. He says, well, what's on your mind? I said, I'd like you to shank my colt. Well, we don't fit. I said, no, no, I didn't say fit my colt. I said, shank my colt.
Mhm.
Tell me how much you get per judge. I'll bring him ready. You don't have to do a thing. You just take the lead rope and you take him in. Well, you're
Mhm.
doing fine. I said, yes. And I'm a woman and you're a man and an AQHA judge and related through marriage to the Whalens. Like I know all those things.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we never looked back. I mean,
Yeah.
he just, yeah. I think the first time Bob, we parked around the backside of Rancho Marietta, which is one of the big equestrian complexes here.
Mhm.
And I was getting him ready, and Bob comes up. He says, is he ready? I said, just about. And he said, well, I need to practice with him. I said, okay. He said, you want to show me how you set him up? So I set him up. He goes, well, that's how a professional would do it. I said, if you want to compete with professionals, you have to do it professionally. He
Right.
said, wow. So he takes the colt and he starts, practicing with him. In
Uh-huh.
the meantime, I won't say who it was, but there was another California trainer who had pulled him kind of next to us, but behind us. And the guy went into his tack room and started throwing stuff out of his tack room, buckets, leg wraps, apple pickers, you name it, he was throwing it out. And I had a little girl with me. She goes, what's his problem? I said, he just realized that I hired Bob Kale to show my horse and he has a stallion. It's the first time I've ever seen a trainer have a temper tantrum. I mean, it
Yeah.
was pretty funny. It was like,
Yeah.
oh well.
That's right.
Yeah. And the 4 judges. So this may be true or not true, but it was told to me by someone who I would think knew. They said one of the
Mhm.
trainers called Russ Rourke on the way home in the airplane
Mm.
and said, there's one of the best age stallions I've seen in my lifetime. And Ross said, who's got him? He said, Bob Kale. So he calls Bob Kale. He says to Bob, who's that horse you got? It's the package. Ugh, that lady won't sell him. Nope, she won't.
That lady.
Oh my
Oh,
God, I thought
such
that was
great
just,
stories.
yeah, I mean, and that
Yeah.
year they
Yeah.
went down when they uh Ross went down to Luke's to do a video to train the judges.
Mhm.
Luke wouldn't let him see Bubba because he'd just gotten there. He'd only been there 2 weeks. He says, no, he just got here. And finally, Alex just said, I want to see the horse. So he pulled the horse out. Said, get the lady on the phone. So Luke called me. He said, Alec Ross wants to talk to you. Okay, about what? He said, they want to use them in a video. I said, oh, okay. A video of what? He said, well, it's a train the trainer video. They won't name the horse, but they want to use him. And Alec got on the phone. He said, please don't say no. I want to use this horse as an example of what we want for halter horses. And we've been looking a long time for the right horse, and he's the right horse. I was flabbergasted. I mean, you don't say no to Alec Ross, and Luke wasn't, I don't think Luke was necessarily happy about it, but they used the horse in the video.
Yeah.
So it was a year of that. Just, and all I did was think, is this the right chess move to make?
Yeah.
George said something to me early on in the stud horse's career. He said, you have one job, one. I said, okay. He said, protect his reputation at all costs. I said, well, don't you mean? He said, no, protect his reputation. People start saying stuff, doing stuff, whatever. He said, it's your job to make sure he's protected. And down to his last day, that is how it was between me and Bubba. It was my job to protect him from gossip, stuff that wasn't true, anything like that. That was my job.
Yeah.
So anyways, it was quite a journey that horse led me on.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all the wisdom, just so many really great nuggets. One of the reasons that I enjoy having these conversations is the things that we learn from one another. And as we talked about, the community that's established in the halter industry when we connect and reconnect at horse shows. So
yes,
you have embodied that and represented that for us. Thank you for your decades of commitment to the industry and then continuing to make an impact even through this conversation. Thank you so much.
You
Thanks
were
for
welcome.
saying yes. Thanks for
Thank
being
you for
brave and
asking
saying
me.
yes.
Yeah.
You bet. Thanks to Danny for connecting us. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.